All right, Phil Lee returning on Friday, the 27th of November, with a new episode of Civil War Chat. Today's topic, I've titled it, A Lie to Demonize Confederate Memorials. So we'll get into that, but I first want to alert you to click on the notification bell in the upper right of the screen so that when you click on that, you'll be notified of my new presentations, and it'll, of course, increase my subscriber base. I'm trying to get to 30 million. So if you click on that, you'll be notified when I'm on next and help me get to that subscriber number. So let me begin by pulling up some notes on this. A lie to demonize Confederate memorials. Confederate statues are destroyed, removed, and vandalized, while streets, schools, and possibly military bases named for Confederate leaders are changed because of a lie. As historian James McPherson puts it, quote, "The Civil War started because of uncompromising differences between the free and slave states over the power of the national government to prohibit slavery in the territories that had not yet become states," close quote. His conclusion is not only wrong, it's a lie. But it's not an obvious lie because the argument has become so accepted by the atmosphere that we've been in for the last, I guess, maybe 100 years or certainly 70. It fails to recognize that slavery was really a euphemistic way of referring to blacks in that statement. I would say certainly for the last 40 years that's been true, probably at least the 50. It's like we've all been in an atmosphere of air, and the academics have then secretly transported us into an aquarium where we're surrounded by water, and the water is teaching us that everything about the Confederacy is bad and that everything about the Northerners deserves to have a halo put around it. And, we've come to accept those arguments. So let me repeat what McPherson is saying is the Civil War started because of uncompromising differences between the free states and the slave states over the power of the national government to prohibit slavery in the territories that had not yet become states. It's really not about slavery. It's about blacks and where blacks would be presented to live, or permitted to live. The antebellum Republican Party did not want to merely exclude slavery from the federal territories. It wanted to exclude blacks. The true objective of the increasingly powerful Northern political interest, as the North gained political power, their objective was to keep blacks, not just slavery, quarantined in the South. The issue first became obvious in 1846 with the advent of the Wilmot Proviso. 12 weeks after the Mexican War started in 1846, Pennsylvania Congressman David Wilmot attached a rider to a $2 million funding bill, a funding bill that would pay for the Army to fight the war. And that rider would require that slavery be prohibited in any territories that might be acquired as a result of the war. Slavery. Now, although this is commonly misinterpreted, as you might expect, as a moral attack on slavery, it was really motivated by white supremacy. Specifically, Wilmot wanted to reserve the new territories for white families. I'll quote it. "I make no war upon the South, nor upon slavery in the South. I have no squeamish sensitivities upon the subject of slavery, nor morbid sympathy for the slave. I plead the cause of the rights of white freemen. I would preserve for free white labor a fair country," meaning the territories at that time, principally the Western territories west of the Missouri River. I would preserve for free white labor a fair country, a rich inheritance where the sons of toil of my own race and my own color can live without the disgrace which association with Negro slavery brings upon free labor. Although the proviso passed the House of Representatives, it failed in the Senate. Nonetheless, the idea stayed alive. It had a lot of strength. 8 years later, during debates over the 1854 Kansas-Nebraska Act that would permit the territories to determine their slave or free status based upon a popular vote in the applicable territories, Abraham Lincoln opined at that time, the whole nation the whole nation is interested that the best use shall be made of these federal territories. We want them for the homes of free white people, close quote. 4 years later, during an 1858 debate with Stephen A. Douglas for election to the Senate from the state of Illinois, Lincoln added, I am not now, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social or political equality of the white and black races. I am not now, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor of intermarriages with white people. There is a physical difference between the white and black races, which will forever forbid the two races living together on social or political equality. 4 years later, as president in 1862, Lincoln's attitude was much the same when he spoke to a group of black leaders visiting the White House, where he urged them to promote mass black immigration to other countries, including some where he might arrange to have lands set aside to receive them. I'm quoting Lincoln now. See our present condition? The country is engaged in war. Our white men cutting one another's throats, none knowing how far it will extend. And then consider what we know to be the truth. But for your race among us, there could be no war. Although many men engaged on either side do not care for you one way or the other. During the 10 years prior to the Civil War, no new slave states were admitted to the Union, whereas 4 free ones, California, Oregon, Minnesota, and Kansas, gained statehood. This tipped the balance of power in the Senate decisively toward the North. Not one of the 4 free states permitted blacks to vote. And Oregon even prohibited free blacks from moving into the state. Other free states, such as Lincoln's Illinois, only permitted blacks to move into them if they were financially prosperous. I think there was an $1,000 net worth requirement, or they had to post a $1,000 bond, something like that. Other states like Indiana had similar requirements. At the start of the Civil War, less than 1% of the population of all the free states were blacks, whereas blacks composed 40% of the population in the 11-state Confederacy. In the 7-state Confederacy that existed prior to Lincoln's call for troops to coerce those 7 states back into the Union against their will, the ratio was even higher than 40%. Now, I don't know if it was 50%, but it was higher than 40%. In some states, it was over 50%. I think most notably South Carolina and Mississippi. And in some counties in those states, it was pretty substantial, well over 50%. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation that prompted congressional laws permitting blacks to enlist in the Union armies to help win the war. The biggest race riot of the era occurred in New York in July 1863, where the number of killed totaled about 120. Some estimates are higher. That's James McPherson, who I'll quote for purposes of the fact that people that love him and hate the Confederacy are really not hate the Confederacy, but a lot of the academic advocates that disparage the Confederacy and feel that statues should be toppled think that he is, probably the dean of all Civil War historians. So I'll quote his number there. Even as slaves were set free by Union military successes after the Emancipation Proclamation, they were largely confined to squalid concentration camps in the South, known as contraband camps. And that was because Northerners would not permit the blacks that were set free to migrate to the states north of the Ohio River and Mason-Dixon line. After Lincoln sent Major General Lorenzo Thomas into the lower Mississippi River Valley during the war to recruit black troops and to see what could be done to improve the conditions for black non-combatants, Major Thomas wrote back, quote, "It will not do to send black refugees into the free states, for the prejudices of the people of those states are against such measures, and some have enacted laws against the reception of free Negroes. Ex-slaves are coming in upon us in such number that some provision must be made for them. You cannot send them north. You all know the prejudices of the northern people against receiving large numbers of the colored race," close quote. Even Massachusetts, the parent cradle of abolitionism, refused to accept black refugees during the Civil War. Famous abolitionist Horace Greeley advocated that occupied Southern lands during the war be given over to freedmen in order to avoid black migration into the North. After the war ended, Massachusetts Congressman George Boutwell, who would become President Grant's Secretary of the Treasury, Boutwell proposed that South Carolina and Florida be reserved exclusively for blacks in order to keep them far south of the Mason-Dixon line. The workers north of that line were really quite worried about free blacks or, contraband blacks, blacks freed by the Emancipation Proclamation coming in mass into the North to take their jobs. But they weren't the only ones. Northern society didn't want them either. And that continued for nearly 100 years. If the typical politician and media editorialist today knew that Northerners entered the Civil War in order to ensure that blacks would be quarantined indefinitely in the South so that the rest of the country could be populated by whites, they might have less interest in toppling Confederate statues or removing the names of Confederate heroes from streets, schools, and buildings, and even military bases. In truth, except for a few, mostly in New England, the Northerners' objective to restrict the spread of slavery was merely a noble-sounding cover for their desire, or for his desire, to establish white supremacy everywhere in America outside the South. That is, in fact, precisely what happened. All 17 states that joined the Union after the start of the Civil War in 1861 to the present, 2020, we went from 33 states to 50 states. All those 17 states, when they joined the Union, had tiny black populations upon achieving statehood. The only exception might be West Virginia, but all the rest They were primarily from the Great Plains, then Alaska and Hawaii. That's exactly what happened. Those came in as lily white states, making the United States, by the time of the school integration crisis, lily white, outside the South. What we are facing now in efforts to take Lee's name out of Washington and Lee University is tyranny. And you can tell tyranny by hypocrisy. The academic historians that teach us that the Confederacy is evil fail to teach us, fail to even acknowledge that the principal objective of keeping slavery outside of the Western territories was to keep blacks outside the Western territories. Because if they admitted that truth, they could not demonize Confederate memorials. They could not blame whatever racism continues to exist in the United States on Southerners. They could not use the South as an excuse for whatever, for the racism that the Northerners themselves had. If you want to get the facts like this, I want you to consider buying this book, Causes of the Civil War. It was just published in September of this year, and this is, like I say, November 27th. I wrote it, okay? You can get it at Barnes & Noble, or you can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon for $22 unsigned. If you want it from me, I'll sign it. And if you're in the United States, I will cover the shipping, and the cost will be $25. Now, if you want to buy it from me, what you need to do is you need to contact me, right? You can contact me right here. Whoops, wait a minute. I need to show you. You can contact me right here. I'm going to pull that up. I think you can begin to see, there's my email address. And I'll enlarge my picture over here. I'm using, as some of you might have figured out, I'm using Zoom. There's my email address. Email me there, Phil_Lee, L-E-I-G-H, @me.com, to get Causes of the Civil War by Philip Lee. $25 delivered to you with my signature. I will pay postage here in the United States. Okay. Let me stop the sharing. Where is it? Right here. Stop sharing. And thank you for watching. Until we meet again, this is Philip Lee.